Welcome to this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust. Thank you for making the time to be here. And before we launch into our whole event here, a few thank yous. First of all, a big thank you to our mindful movement teacher for today. Also, a big thank you to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for producing this evening. And as well to Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy, who offer the mindful dialogue gathering after this session. It's a great way to build in the whole smorgasbord event, if you like, for Monday night, is to join the mindful movement at 6:30. And then you can make your way over here for meditation and the Dharma talk. And then afterward, you can join mindful dialogue, which is an opportunity to connect with like-minded people, to share about observations from the talk, how you're applying mindfulness in your life. If you'd like to know more on how to join these groups, you can check out my Facebook page, or you can go to my website and you'll find the listing for these Zoom classes. And the thank yous continue to roll onward. First, to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this class, to my good friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, which has been the host for Monday Night Meditation for many, many years, up till we went on to quarantine. Also, to let you know that if you'd like to sign up for a mailing list, you can do that on my website. And as well, this class is offered in the spirit of dana, or generosity. It's offered freely so that no one is denied access to these teachings. And your support, if you feel so inspired, really helps me. It takes a fair bit of time, a fair bit of financial investment to keep this thing rolling onward. So thank you so much for your support. All my talks are available online, and you can find all kinds of resources there. So here we go. First of all, I just want to say it's great to share these practices with you and to have this time. We're going to start off with our meditation, and to do so, you might want to make sure you're not going to be disturbed. You can put your cell phone on stun, make sure the door is closed, explain to your animals, if you have any, that you're going to be quiet for a little while. And tonight's talk is about the power of community. And I thought we might start with a little bit of movement, but also something called the offering of merit as a way to kind of connect into your community as a way of engaging into your meditation. So if you like, you can just sort of feel around what it's like inside your body, any little adjustments you might need to make that are going to make you feel comfortable. And you might want to reach your arms up overhead. You can stretch up to the heel of the right hand, up to the heel of the left hand, alternate back and forth, begin to deepen your breath a little bit. You're on mute, so you can make any sounds you want. Stretch up, long, full, deep breath, draw the navel in toward the spine, lift your chin up toward the ceiling, and slowly lower the arms. As you're ready, you can close your eyes. And just begin to sense what it feels like on the inside right now. Notice the sounds around you. And let this be your own way of transitioning from focus on the outer world to heightening your awareness to the inner world. You might take a few moments just to slow down your breath. And we're going to start this meditation with a little reflection on what's called the offering of merit. In your practice, you'll be generating some kind of merit, some kind of fruit of your practice. And you might just imagine before you begin offering the merit or the fruit of your practice to yourself. Imagine your life opening with greater ease and well-being. You might now bring into mind those in your inner circle, those who are closest in, and imagine and feel, if you can, this offering of the merit or the fruit of your practice to be solely to their benefit. Imagine offering it freely. You might bring into mind someone who might be struggling in your life right now. And just imagine and feel, if you can, the offering of the fruit of your practice to in some way be of benefit. Imagining it now radiating out to those you live with, those you work with, freely offering the fruit, the merit of your practice to their benefit. And imagine now those who might be meditating at this moment, perhaps in this meditation, all around the planet, offering the fruit of your practice to be to their benefit. And now letting it radiate out in all directions to all beings without discrimination. May all beings in some way receive the merit, the fruit of your practice right now. And as you offer it outward, again offering it inward to yourself. And we'll begin this practice of arriving and gathering. Sensing on the inside, the forehead smooth. Letting all the muscles of the face to soften. Letting go of this day and arriving in the here and now. And could you in any way feel the volume of your lips? The weight of your tongue? Inviting a softening through your jaw. Sensing now the back of the head and the base of the skull. And the back of the neck. The tops of the shoulders. And you might now feel or imagine the weight and the volume of your arms as you sense down through the elbows and down through the wrists. And feel or imagine a sense of softening and relaxation now flooding into your palms and fingers and thumbs, the backs of the hands. And sensing any pulse or tingling or aliveness here. And sensing now your lower back and the buttocks. the very gentle movement of your belly as you breathe. And scanning now down into the lower abdomen and down through the floor of the pelvis. Feeling the hip joints. And feeling now the weight and the volume of your legs as you sense from the hip joints down through your knees, down through the ankles. The tops of the feet and your toes. The soles of the feet and the heels. And as you sense inside, the posture of your body from the inside, is there anything that could relax or soften right now? Is it possible to embrace this sense of deep relaxation while simultaneously noting the alertness, the quality of wakefulness right now? And here you might escort your attention to an anchor, to a focal point in the senses. Perhaps the movement of the breath at the belly or the nostrils. Perhaps just tracking where you feel the breath the most predominant, or just a general sense of your body breathing. You might like to explore using the sounds all around you as your anchor, the real-time vibration of sound. Or alternatively, you might take a moment to again flood your hands and fingers and thumbs with awareness. And notice the real-time sensations here, pulse or tingling or vibration or subtle energy, using this as your anchor. Whatever you choose, breath or sound or the feeling in the palms, let this be your primary point of attention for the next period of time. Acknowledging the wandering nature of the mind. And when you notice the mind far away, is it possible to gently escort your attention back, to re-relax, to re-arrive, and to receive the moment in the here and now? At any time, you can begin again. And first to relax and soften, and to guide your attention back to your anchor. And just notice how intimately you can feel on the inside. You may notice this two-part definition of meditation. The first part is this practice of noticing what is happening as it's happening. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. Aware of the sound vibrations as they're happening. Aware of the aliveness inside, pulse, tingling, vibration, warmth, coolness, as it's happening. The second part of this definition is noticing also your relationship to what is happening, the attitude in the mind. If there is any leaning in or pushing away, any sense of confusion. Sensing this quality of non-judging awareness, this quality of mindfulness, the seat of the witness. And as you continue, you might explore from time to time when there is a sense of arriving in the here and now, of widening, broadening your awareness. Noticing everything that is changing and the attitude in the mind, how you're holding your relationship to what is happening. In these remaining 5 minutes or so, you might refresh your practice. Again, sensing this field of relaxed presence. The face expressionless, relaxing the lips and the tongue. Softening the belly, the lower back, and buttocks. And soften and feel the soles of the feet and the heels. The palms and fingers and thumbs. And sensing again your anchor, breath or sound or feeling. How intimately can you experience and feel on the inside right now? And can you sense the seat of the witness, your capacity to observe without judgment, broadening, widening your attention to all that is changing and sensing what it means to let things be. Deeply relaxed, at the same time alert, utterly open and awake, allowing and letting be. You might, in these remaining minutes, allow any practice of doing to fall away, exploring now what it means to simply be. As you sense the aliveness inside and the movement of the mind, what could relax, or what could soften, what could let go right now? And what could relax, what could soften, what could let go even more right now? And you might again reflect on the quality of presence. If you could name the quality of presence right now, how would you describe it in a word or two? whatever you have let go of here, whatever you are taking with you from your practice, you might, in these final moments, offer the merit, offer the fruit to yourself. And in your own way, offer the fruit of your practice, offer the merit of your practice to be a benefit to those who come to mind. May all beings in all directions receive the merit and the fruit of your practice. And you might, with your eyes closed, let your head drift a little bit to the left and the right. And as part of your practice now, let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good for you. Let your body be your guide. No rush, no hurry. Just stretch, move, and feel. Welcome. There's an old standard joke you've probably heard if you've been around the meditation community for very long. And it talks about the advantage of meditating with others, physically having people around you when you meditate. And the main advantage is if you're having particularly insane thoughts, you blame them on the person behind you. I was meditating with Tara, my wife, this morning, and after our meditation, I said, if that's true, based on this last meditation, you're pretty twisted. There's such benefit in meditating with others. And that's a little bit of what I'd like to talk about tonight. Back in my ashram days, we were always looking for ways to sustain our practice. Because it's hard. As you know, if you've tried to keep a meditation practice going, it's challenging because inevitably you're encountering unpleasant stuff and it takes some resilience to keep going. So we had a phrase that we used a lot. That company is stronger than willpower. If you want anything in your life, you will find it immensely easier if you associate with like-minded people who also want that. So I'd like to talk about this phenomena a little bit tonight. First, to talk about how you and all of us are part of a social collective. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the shadow side of being part of a social collective when you're not awake. And thirdly, to talk about what it's like to wake up from whatever social collective you were associated with. And then finally, the power of associating mindfully with a collective of people. So we're all part of some kind of social network or social collective, and quite often we're not even aware of how much it's formed our perspective. Many, many years ago, I was supporting someone in having a baby, actually birthing a baby. And so we're checking out these videos on birthing at home because it was a home birth. And they had these two examples, and we kind of watched these two families kind of prepare for this home birth. And the first was this California couple, quintessential Northern California. They had the hot tub, they had the incense, they had the flowers, they had the long hair, they had the California light. It was all so mellow, man. And then they moved to another family. And this family was from Michigan. Big, extended, loud family. There was no emphasis on like this safe and sacred space. The mother was kind of like hanging out in the living room. There was extended family coming and going. There were people arguing about what she should be doing. It was really, really loud. And I was watching this and I thought, oh, the second case looks really tragic. But then I realized for this little person coming into the planet, this is her tribe. This is her network here. So get used to it. We're so influenced by our primary culture. And even before that, we're influenced by our natal experience. If you've ever read the book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, it is phenomenal how much information you pick up when you are in the womb and how much that can influence your perspective on life. So it becomes a very interesting inquiry when you reflect back on your family and the culture in which you were spawned and raised. How did that form your beliefs? What were the gifts that you received from your family of origin? And also, of course, what were the wounds? What was the shadow side of that? I was looking for humorous stories about cross-cultural conflicts to sort of illustrate just how different our upbringings are. And I couldn't find any stories that really fit this talk. Either the stories of cross-cultural clashes were either filled with rampant stereotyping or really, really nasty humor. Some of the more mild stuff was a woman from England who married a Parisian. And she was just going out to get the newspaper. And her new husband stopped her and said, "You're going out like that?" And she realized that her husband had a huge emphasis on presentation, and she wasn't made up. I managed to get deeply immersed and some pretty fluent in French through the Peace Corps. And I was very excited about getting fluent in French. And I lived in the city. I taught in a university, so I got a pretty good, academic style French training. But a lot of people would come from en brousse, from out in the faraway lands. They come into the city, and where I was once at a dinner with some classic French folks, and we were having this dinner. And a lot of the folks who Peace Corps folks who really kind of learned kind of in the streets out in the villages. And I remember once the French host saying to someone, "Would you like a little more?" And this very, very sweet girl, this is a very sweet American, said, No, thank you, I'm pregnant. And then someone else was asked later, would you care for more green beans? And what she meant to say was, no, thank you. But what she said was something you'd imagine two guys in a bar in an argument suggesting what the other person might do with his mother. And to watch the reaction was horrifying, but also hilarious. We're so immersed in our culture that we don't see our conditioning. There's a great line of two little fish are swimming out to sea down a river, and a big fish comes in and passes them and says to the little fish, "Nice water." And one little fish says to the other little fish, "What the heck is water?" We don't see it. We're living out of this lens of reality that we have taken to be true. And then the question becomes, how do we wake up out of this social conditioning? It can be quite challenging. And as I thought of this, I was reminded about a story I read a number of years ago about a young man named Derek Black. He was the son, or is the son, of Don Black, who founded a group called Stormfront, which was the first and the largest white nationalist site. His mother had been married to David Duke, who was in the KKK and ran for Senate, you might recall. And he was a very bright guy. And even as a young kid, he was raised to be the heir to this white nationalist dynasty. And he was very active from a very young age, really taking on this ideology that the United States was intended for white Europeans, and that someday everyone else would have to leave. He was taught to be suspicious of other races, to be suspicious of the government, to be suspicious of tap water. His parents pulled him out of public school and they homeschooled him, and he traveled with his father, absolutely immersed in this culture of white supremacy. As a kid, because he was so bright, he learned how to code, and he created a little sub-site on a little sub group for children, all about white supremacy. So very much a spokesperson. And he decided at some point to go to college and study medieval European history. Super bright guy. And he decided to go to New College in Florida, which is highly liberal. And he thought, all these liberals, they are just going to be so ripe for influencing. But he realized that he had to go low key. So he didn't publicize who he was, but he was part of a radio show at that time. And he would kind of go off campus and do his radio show on white supremacy. At some point, he took a semester in Germany. He wanted to learn German, and part of his study in medieval history. And while he was there, he kept in touch with the university through kind of message boards. And in that message board, someone discovered who he was, and they outed him. There's a long conversation among all these college students on what do. How do they respond to someone who is a mouthpiece for hate? Some said, throw him out. We need to shun him. Others thought, no, maybe not. And as the story goes on, this one fellow, Matthew Stevenson, had started hosting a weekly Shabbat dinner in his campus apartment. He was the only Orthodox Jew in the school. And he decided to invite Derek. And this Shabbat dinner was a collection of all kinds of different people from different nationalities. And they decided as a group that they were not going to confront him, but they were going to include him. Now, when Derek came back to the States, he absolutely felt ostracized. And this was the only invitation he had to engage in anything. And so he went to Shabbat dinner. And because the group took on this attitude of including and not confronting, and because he was so aware of being ostracized, on one level, he felt very comfortable, and he started listening. And eventually, among this diverse group of people, they eventually began to turn the conversation to his point of view. And they began to engage, and they began to spend more time and hang out and go bowling. And he became so touched by the relationships and the ability to engage that at one point he renounced all of his white supremacy background and went through a very painful time of confronting his father, with whom obviously he had a great connection, and went on to become a spokesperson for moving through that particular point of view. The story is amazing, and I encourage you to read it, because it's really well done, and there are different versions of the story here and there. But it's stunning how much we assume that the water in which we were born is true. I used to lead a little workshop way back when on our views on money, and I would just ask people, what did your parents say about money? And you might just reflect on that right now. What did your parents say about money? And now, how much is that belief present in you right now? My parents were both depression kids. My father would ride his bike around and sell bread that his mother had baked from his bicycle. So there's a certain attitude about money that I very much heard and took on myself. So we simply believe what we're told is real. As someone said, like when we're small, we have no virus protection. So all this malware can install itself, and we just assume this is part of the operating system. There's an assumption that this is real. And waking up to that can be quite profound. A woman once on a meditation retreat, we were having an interview, and she said, "Oh my God, I'm becoming more and more like my mother." She was horrified. And we met again later in the week, and she said, "Yes, I'm becoming more and more like my mother, but it's not all bad. I'm seeing the shadow, but I'm also seeing the light." And we've received gifts, all the gifts from that which we've received in our conditioning, as well, of course, as the wounds. There's a little story of Nasruddin. Nasruddin and his friends decided to play a joke on people in a village. So Nasruddin drew a crowd around him, and he lied to them about a gold mine in a certain place. When everyone ran to get their hands on the gold, Nasruddin started running with them with a shovel. When asked by his friends why he was following them, he said, "Well, so many people believed it, it might actually be true." It's so easy to fall into this slumber of groupthink, and particularly now, we look at the politics, this formation into tribes. It's very hard to not calcify and to make anyone who doesn't agree with you wrong. And unless we wake up, we're locked into this perception, we're locked into this identity. And that process of waking up is part of your journey. You know, one of my teacher's teacher once said, and you have to, like, for this to be true, you got to buy into the reincarnation stuff and all that, but it's a fascinating perspective. He said how, like, the fear of death is really nothing compared to the fear of life, the fear of coming into life. When I think about that, I think, oh my God, I would imagine myself, disincarnate, coming into form and going, oh my God, 7th grade, dentist. But he said this blew my mind. He said, a conscious soul coming into form will select a family where they feel alienated as a way of staying awake. Isn't that wild? So that sort of disquiet you have, from your early childhood is part of, like, the reminder to not to fall asleep, not to fall into sort of that tribal slumber. So I'd like to say a little bit about what it means to kind of wake up out of community. I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania, right in the middle of Pennsylvania Deutsch country. When I was in kindergarten, there were a good number of kids in my kindergarten class that didn't speak English. They spoke German. And all my little friends' last names were Fenstermacher, Brubacher, Dietrich. And we had a number of Amish and Mennonites. Now, you go to any church in any village, you go to any village, you're going to have a Reformed and Orthodox. So the Mennonites are more the Reformed. So the Orthodox are like, we need to preserve the core teachings and hold them sacred and not make any exceptions. Reformed church is all about, we need to adapt and make it work. So Anna Brubacher, in my kindergarten class, her Mennonite church said that you could have electricity, but only on the weekends when you were entertaining. In my area, we had what we were called the black bumper Mennonites. You could have a car, but everything had to be painted black, no chrome. Others would say you could have tractors, but you couldn't have rubber tires on the tractors. They had to have metal wheels. You see these tractors with metal wheels. Then, of course, there were the Amish, which were very orthodox and no variations. But there's something really wild about the Amish. And it has to do with something called rumspringa. And rumspringa is kind of the acknowledgement of the rite of passage in adolescence. The translation of rumspringa means jumping around or hopping around. Usually at about age 14 to 16, you have a period of time before you make a choice to be baptized into the church. Now, for some, this is a time of courtship. It's a time of like finding a spouse. So the rules are kind of loosened up so that you can go out there and play the field, multiple fields. But for others, it's really seen as, how do I say it, as getting your yayas out. You're allowed to like go wild, see what it's like on the outside, experiment, and then make a decision. Now, about 85 to 90% of those adolescents who engage into rumspringa, they come back and they join the church. But the idea here is that there's a choice. Now, there are a lot of variations about how they enforce this, but it's fascinating. It's this nod to what it means to wake up from the culture or the tribe and make a conscious choice. Of course, when we look through this lens of Buddhism, we have kind of the classic story of the Buddha, who walked away from his riches, walked away from his wife and child because of the call to wake up was so strong. We all go through this stage sooner or later. And it's an interesting question. What was your rumspringa? How did you rebel? How did you try to break out and shatter your identity with your culture and to get a sense of who and what you are? There's a model of like human development I really like. It really speaks to first what it's like when you're living in fear and you're living in kind of a poverty consciousness. On this level, you just take whatever you can take because someone else may grab it. So it's a pretty primitive form of grab it now because if you don't take it, someone else will. The next level of how we live, which is where most people live, is you exchange your personal freedom in order to belong. I hate my job, but it pays the bill. I can't stand what I do for a living, but what are you going to do with 2 kids in college? The next level is that you become someone valuable within your social group. You become an influencer. You're a leader. So there's a sense of being empowered, within your social network. Then the next level is where you start to really ask yourself, what do I want? You begin to ask yourself, am I living the life that's genuine, or am I living a life that was designed to please my culture, my primary caretakers. What's most important for me? And this stage of life can be very painful. It's the setup for the proverbial 40 days and nights in the desert when you need to walk away and ask those really, really deep questions. What is most important in your life? What do you really, really want? There's a burning away of all the conditioning to sense who you are at your most genuine. Here, there's this sense of your Dharma, if you will, your path, that which you can't not do. And on the other side of the desert, which might be 5 minutes or 40 years, is you're being exactly who you are. And from that place of freedom and creative expression, you contribute from that place. It's a wonderful kind of archetypal description of life. We begin to wake up out of our conditioning to discover who and what we truly are, and then to live from that place. At one point, many, many years ago, extremely frustrated with my patterns of accommodation and sacrificing myself for harmony. Out of kind of an inner rage, I just said, I'm going to be me until I'm fired from now on. It was kind of a line in the sand in my life, and a powerful shift. I was listening to an interview with Lenny Kravitz, and he talked about how he was given offered all these record deals, but told this, you're going to have to take on this persona in order to get this money, and he kept turning it down. And then he did his first album completely for himself. And that's what launched his career. And he said it was only when I decided to be me that my creative life began to flow. So discovering and then divorcing yourself from your early conditioning is a big part of the spiritual path. It's about waking up to who you are not, to find out who you really are, and then to live from that place. But even when you have these insights of this is what I want, this is what's most important, life goes on and you have to redirect your path. And then here you can begin to realize that not only are you the result of your community and your social network, but you can actually create your social network to align with what you most want. And then the question becomes, what happens when you do align with like-minded people, with people who really want what you want? And this is where we begin to explore the power of Sangha, the power of community. And again, through this Buddhist lens, there are 3 refuges, 3 places to go when you feel lost. The first is the Buddha, and the Buddha can mean the kind of the allegory of the Buddha's life, the personal story of the Buddha's life, or simply the translation of the Buddha, awake, the refuge of wakefulness, that at any time you can wake up, you can access non-judging awareness. The second refuge is Dharma, which can be seen as the teachings, it can be seen as the path, or you can translate it as direct translation of truth. At any given moment, you can ask yourself, what do I know to be true? The third refuge is Sangha. And this can translate from community, from those who want and believe what you want and what you believe, or in its essence, love. So there's the classic story of Ananda, the Buddha's cousin, who was also sort of his assistant. And Ananda had this great insight. He runs up to the Buddha and he says, isn't it true that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life. And the Buddha allegedly said, don't say that. Don't say that. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life. That's a powerful statement. Spiritual friendship, community, company is the whole of the holy life. If you want to be a better tennis player, find people who are really, really good and find your way to play with them. You'll become a really good tennis player. When I wanted to get fluent in French, I looked for people whose French was worse than their French, I looked for people whose English was worse than my French. And then that forced me to improve. I've told this story so many times, but I remember reading an article, I think in Forbes, it said, take your 5 best friends, average out their income. It's probably your income. And when I read that, I thought, I need new friends. But the truth is, you gravitate and resonate with those that you spend the most time with. So being conscious about who you spend time with can make all the difference in the world. Just this last weekend, the year of living mindfully, the 10th year of living mindfully ended. And for me, this is very much an experiment in finding like-minded people to sustain awareness, to sustain what it means to be awake in these challenging times. And so the question becomes, what community, what company might you cultivate in your life that would most support you? And if you like, you might take a moment and just close your eyes and take 3 slow, deep breaths. And you might just take a moment here and reflect on those in your life who have been your allies. Those people in your life who at some point, they get you, they appreciate you, they support you. And you might offer just a moment of thanks. And for some of us, when you think of your allies, the people that have your back, you might think, my gosh, there are not many people here. And take a moment to acknowledge that. If you feel a lack of company, a lack of like-minded community, can you imagine making more room for that? The possibility of feeling more connection. And imagine what your life might feel like inside if you felt a sense of connection with people who are more aligned with what you most want in your life. If you like, you can deepen your breath. You can open your eyes. Years back, when I took over the presidency of a kind of a large nonprofit, one of the board members came up to me and said, I only have one question for you. Who's in your lifeboat? I had no idea what he was talking about. And he went on to explain, to say, when the ship goes down, or when the ship is under all kinds of bad weather, who do you want in your lifeboat? And I said, gosh, I'm not sure. He said, figure that out. It was really, really wonderful advice. we need connection. We thrive on connection. And as we've been exploring, there's a shadow side to connection. That sometimes what we're connected with is part of our unconscious conditioning, and it reinforces a sense of feeling held back. And part of our work in life is to wake up to that conditioning, but then to really ask, what do I truly want? What most enlivens me, and how can I align my life in such a way that I'm connected with others who most want what I want? Shortly we have our week-long fall retreat coming up, and this is all online, our first major retreat online, a couple hundred folks. And I'm going to miss the physical connection of being all in one room, because I know for myself, when I sit down for a 45-minute meditation by myself, the chances of me getting to the end are challenged. But when I'm sitting in a room with 100 other people, for whatever reason, it's a little bit easier to stay present, if nothing else, kind of the shame I would feel by walking out. And it'll be very interesting as we move into the online retreat to kind of tap into the interconnectedness of shared intention. Because when we can do that, it really brings out the best of us. We have a natural affinity to gather in groups, whether it be a sports team, whether it be a political affiliation. And when it comes to waking up, it's a very curious, very, very curious element here. What I find many people who are drawn to mindfulness and meditation are more naturally introverted. And many people, even if you're extroverted, many people find that as their practice gets more engaged, they actually become more introverted. So when you look toward community and meditation or mindfulness, you're ending up with a community of introverts, which gets really curious. To be in a community of people who would rather not be in a community of people, but are either part of that community of people because they know it's good for them, or they feel a certain kind of resonance. But I know with our Monday night class in Arlington, there are many, many people who just love to show up, sit, close their eyes, listen to the talk, get in the car and go home. Solitude has real benefit. Lots of studies have shown that when you take that time to really go inward, your capacity for empathy, for creativity, for reflection gets really enhanced. When you step back, many people in that sort of the introverted stage, they become more reflective and then more strategic, living from more of a place of what they really, really want in life, as opposed to living a more reactive life, more proactive in their life. But like anything, there's a balance. Too much introversion can lead to a sense of loneliness and isolation. And there are lots of studies on the effect of isolation and loneliness. People who are chronically lonely and isolated tend to have more heart disease and stroke. Immune system gets compromised, slower recovery time, more depression, and possibly even early death. As my parents aged, they always lived in the country, and they insisted on living in the country. And I could watch what happened as they aged, of feeling more and more isolated, and how much they needed that sense of community. And so the question becomes for you, I think, how do you find that balance? How do you find that sense of stepping back in your life in a way that you can feel refreshed and renewed to really wake up to who you are and what you really, really want? And how much would high quality connection and good company serve you? And so a few questions come to mind. The first question is, what do you really want in life? The second question is, well, then what would most support you? And the third question, how could you find and cultivate the relationships that will enliven you in pursuit of what you most want? I find some of us tend to be very extroverted. We're easily drawn to groups, and there it's easily to move into overstimulation, to losing center. Some of us, moving into center is pretty easy, but the edge is to actually engage. And the question becomes, how do you engage? And particularly now that we are kind of in quarantine for the foreseeable future, I think our only avenue really is exploring, through online groups. And there are lots of online groups, talks you can listen to. Really encourage you, if you'd like to explore cultivating more connection, hang on and join. Just check out the Mindful Dialogue group led by Ray and Tara, just as a way to listen to others about their practice, anything you'd like to share, and get that sense of connection through practice. Through the Insight Meditation community, there are what are called Kalyana Mitta groups, or spiritual friends groups, a way that you connect and share about your practice. There's a great thing called Telesanga, where you set your time, the phone rings, you're instantly connected to a little meditation hall, and you're guided through practice. Check that out. That's pretty cool. You might also explore, what would it be like if you were to reach out to old friends, reach out to those that you feel some affinity with, to risk that sense of building the kind of network that would fill your lifeboat. This becomes the challenge. The challenge of really cultivating and building that refuge of Sangha, of community and like-minded people. So I would like to close with a short little reading. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh on how to find true solitude, particularly in the midst of turmoil. You might find some help in the following words. If you like, you can close your eyes. And you might take 3 slow and full deep breaths. And these words speak to what it means to really be alone. And being alone means you're established firmly in the here and the now. You become aware of what is happening in the present moment. You use your mindfulness to become aware of every feeling, of every perception you have. You're aware of what's happening around you in the community, but you're always with yourself. You don't lose yourself. That's the Buddha's definition of the ideal practice of solitude. Not to be caught in the past or carried away by the future, but always to be here, body and mind united, aware of what is happening in the present moment. That is real solitude. Can you imagine the balance of cultivating this deep sense of solitude and inner connection, and at the same time, a feeling of wholesome connection with those around you, those who want what you want, who are excited by what excites you and what lights you up? If you have that sense of community, you might take a moment to celebrate it. If you find it lacking, can you imagine the possibility of opening into a greater sense of interconnection, where you might feel more supported, where you might support and inspire others? You might again take a moment to reflect on your practice and offer the merit or the fruit of your practice to yourself. Can you imagine your path filled with a sense of greater ease? Can you imagine offering that out to all beings in all directions, including yourself? May every one of us feel free, feel safe, and feel happy. As you're ready, you can deepen your breath, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for making the time for practice. May you and your solitude and your sense of community enjoy and savor this life that you have. Thank you again. Many blessings in your practice and in all things.